And we'll go ahead and kick things off, and we'll obviously keep letting people in as we go. But so excited to be here tonight with all of you. Thanks for spending part of your weekend with us. Um, I'm getting the sense that Josie is frozen again, so hopefully she's still hearing us. But anyways, I wanted to take a moment to introduce EDD Adaptive Sports. We're an adaptive sports organization that was established in 1998. We offer programs in central New York and northern Vermont, and are just getting back to our in-person programs this summer. So if you are interested in learning more about our programs, you can find us online, and I'll share that link in the chat so you can see more about what we're doing. But we're so excited to spend an hour tonight with Josie Fouts, who's just back from her Paralympic trials. I want to thank Josie for making the time to be with us. I want to thank Sarah Raimundo, who got us connected. We really appreciate that, and your help in getting this event off the ground. And thanks everyone for being here tonight. I think I may have mentioned this already, but we're going to have a little bit of a guessing game later in the hour. So we're going to go ahead and put those questions in the chat for you now in case you want to think about them a little bit. But we'll put those in and we'll take a look at them later in the hour. But without further ado, I want to introduce Josie. So as I mentioned, Josie is an athlete. She's a scientist. She's an advocate for accessibility. She's an avid paracyclist turned elite competitor, and we're really lucky to have some time with her tonight. I've gotten to know her just a little bit in the last 2 months, and really enjoyed everything about Josie. So I know that we're going to have a great time together tonight. Her positive approach to sport is really inspiring. And I know that diving into the world of cycling in the last few years has helped her change her perspective about sport and disability. So I'm excited for her to talk more about that. So without further ado, I'll introduce Josie Fouts. You're still muted, Josie.
All right, there you go. Thanks, Gretchen. And thank you everyone for being here and bearing with me as my internet cuts out promptly at 4 my time. Like Gretchen said, so I am a new cyclist, but I am an advocate for the bicycle because I totally believe in its power, not just as a workout machine, but also something that a tool to help us learn about ourselves. And essentially what we'll be doing today is going through my mini docu-film Go Josie and I'll be commentating about all the themes and giving you inside stories about what went into the film and how it all started. So this film all started with coronavirus, which everyone knows kind of stopped the world. But the way that I see everything, even setbacks, I see them as opportunities. And for me specifically, with the games being postponed, it gave me the opportunity to have fun on my bicycle instead of just training and then competing and then training and competing. So specifically, not just on my road or my TT bike or my time trial bike, I was finding a lot of freedom and fun on my mountain bike. And that's also kind of how my passion for para mountain biking sparked as well. Like me deciding to give myself something that was for fun rather than business was a really hard mental decision. I was like, okay, so if the Paralympics don't offer mountain biking, why would I get a mountain bike? And also at the same time, I could feel this pressure that was coming down from the Olympic and Paralympic level telling me that I was not capable of riding a mountain bike if they do not offer the sport for para athletes. And I expressed this to my community, and they're like, Josie, that's the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard. If anyone can ride a mountain bike, it's you. And I was like, you're right. And then it really got me back to thinking, like, why did I pick cycling? And I was like, I picked cycling because I just wanted to hang out with a bunch of cool people and get into good shape. And essentially, I was like, okay, well, let's do it. Let's all buy mountain bikes because they're not going to be available later. And here we are. um, so I got on a mountain bike and I loved it. And I loved it so much that I decided to take a 5-week road trip in the middle of 2020 to ride my mountain bike. And of course, I planned every day out. We're gonna go up to the Pacific Northwest from San Diego, and then inland a little bit, and come down and loop through Colorado, Utah, Arizona, back to San Diego. But it was funny because the day that we left, fire started in California. So we had a decision. Do we stick to the plan that we made and just drive into the fires, or do we adapt and we kind of like move on? So we decided to just shoot the gaps of good quality air because breathing is super important. And that just led us to Utah and Moab on the White Rim Trail, where we pulled up to this random van that we kind of knew through another friend. And it turned out that guy had a Asian adopted wife, and he lived next door to a guy with 2 hooks for hands. And so we like hit it off immediately. And he turned out to be David Stiles, the filmmaker of Go Josie. And then just like a short 4 months later, we were in San Diego together shooting. So that's how this film came about. It was totally not planned, but it was a pleasant surprise. And I look at it as an opportunity to tell my story. And yeah, so that's how that started. And so now I'm thinking we should just go through it if we're all ready. Woo. So I'm gonna share my screen. And I'm just on YouTube. And I'm definitely most stubborn about asking for help. I don't want it. I'm gonna pause. How's the sound?
There's a little interruption, Josie. Do you know that there's like a checkbox when you share video in the bottom left for the original audio?
I did not. Let's try that. New share.
Yeah.
Share sound. Nice. 5. All right. I'm definitely most stubborn about asking for help because I don't want it. All right, how was that?
I can hear that. Can everyone else hear that?
Great.
Awesome. Cool. So this is kind of where I stopped for first. Can you guys see me too?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So as a amputee / Miss Stubbornness on Instagram, there's been a lifelong struggle for asking for help. This film is about how bicycles are helping me overcome my own struggles. The first lesson everyone learns when riding a bike is about balance. If you go too far one way, you fall. And to avoid falling, you don't fall harder the other way. You work towards finding the balance in the middle.
in kindergarten, I started actively stop caring about what other people think because I had to move on with my life, because otherwise it was just going to be one kid after the next that I have to get through and get their approval or just have them like me. I feel like that definitely separates me from the average person. But then at the same time, I overcompensate with relationships that are meaningful. I like really care about like what my family thinks, what my friends think. Like, care too much, Ned. But in general, don't really care what people think.
All right, so not caring what others think got me through 18 years of school, but this mindset is very unbalanced, which is why I overcompensate with caring too much about what my friends and family think. Today, I'm still searching for the balance, and I use the bicycle to build relationships in a healthy way with my friends, family, and strangers. So I don't know if you guys caught that, but I put my stub into Taylor's hand, and Taylor, the guy with the blonde hair, is the first person that ever held my stub with a smile. Before, others would be freaked out and not want to touch my stub, which made me not like my stub. Finding someone that likes all parts of me changed how much I liked myself as well. Oh yeah.
Hey, I was born in South Korea, adopted when I was 6 months old, grew up in Toledo, Ohio for 20 plus years of my life. It was totally normal to just be singled out every day of my life, to walk down the street and like kids' eyes would just be like, what? What is that? And so my normal is actually being outside of other people's boxes, not being comfortable. I'm like very comfortable being uncomfortable, which is kind of funny to say out loud. I was a part of a closed adoption, so I get no family history, no genetic history. I have no idea about like where I came from, like what kind of like family do I come from, what is built into my genetics. Essentially, this is a Michael Crichton quote, but I'm like a leaf that didn't know that it was a part of a tree.
Being adopted and not knowing my past affects me to my core. It makes the feeling of being uncomfortable and disconnected comforting to me. The bicycle teaches me that comfort and connection are important. If I'm not comfortable on the bike, I'll get injured. There are so many parts to the bicycle, and if they aren't connected, it won't work. So I'm not a mechanic, even though it kind of looks like I'm trying. And like I said, the bicycle needs a whole bunch of different parts to work correctly. And this is me struggling by myself as what I call young Josie, working on her bike, stubborn in her garage.
You hear what the kids say when you're in kindergarten, and you just learn to just not care, which is the way that I have lived my life, just so mind over body, mind over matter. and cycling in general is that I have to learn about my feelings or my RPE, rated perceived effort. And that's like the most important metric of becoming an athlete and a really elite paracyclist. Cycling has flipped my whole perspective. Before, I was mind over matter, mind over body. Now it's like, all right, body's gotta have a say in here, otherwise it's not balanced.
So far you've heard the bicycle teach me 3 lessons: balance, comfort, and connection.
But it will be an ongoing journey.
Oh yeah. Are you hungry? I'm starving. Yeah, me too. That's cool. All right, so I think it's.
So my name's Katie Walker, and I was born in Taiwan, Taipei, Taiwan. And I was adopted when I was 2.5 and grew up in Ohio. I met Josie at the gym. She's like, I'm missing my arm. I was like, so am I. We discovered that we had a lot of similarities in training for cycling. We met in about March or April in 2019. And I had just started cycling in January 2019, so it was fairly new.
My friend Katie and I are like twins. We both were adopted, grew up in Ohio, and born without a left hand. Before I met Katie, I took pride in being unique, different, and unrelatable. But when I met Katie, I learned we had more in common than differences. And I realized what I thought was pride was actually loneliness. And now when I see anyone else, males, females, riders, people with 2 hands, I find we also have more in common than differences.
Josie, you have to get a prosthetic and nobody else has one. So that just made me feel even more outside the box.
So this is now 2017. I do the thing everybody else is doing. I go get a job, we get health insurance, then I go to see a prosthesis and I'm like, all right, I want to get a hand. It turned out my health insurance denied me from getting a myoelectric prosthetic, and in their words, it was, seems like you've been doing fine without it, you don't really need it. That's kind of what I thought too, so that's the attitude I had until I met Katie. And it wasn't until, I would say, a first couple of times of us hanging out where I started thinking about me having one, because I could literally see her with hers and like, she can do it, I can do it. She makes it look so easy.
So when I was little, like in this picture, I tried prosthetics, but I didn't like them because I couldn't feel the fake arm or my arm. So after I got my only myoelectric prosthetic in 5th grade, the doctors asked, Josie, what great things can you do? And I answered, peel a banana really, really slowly. So it became clear that the prosthetics were limiting me more than helping me. But now, 15 years later, now that I want to compete in cycling, I find that not using a prosthetic is limiting my abilities. So now I have a prosthetic for cycling, and surprisingly, I enjoy it off the bike as well.
So I showed up to my first track meet, which I would say is a little bit more intense than, say, like a road race. And so everybody's like hyper focused on the racing. And then I see this one guy, one leg, just cruising around, smiling and having a good time. And that was Leo Rogers.
So I've been a mechanic pretty much all my life, just because my dad has been a helicopter mechanic, and I just kind of sprouted off him. So, you know, after my accident, I was like, dang, what if I can like still shoot for it? So like, I just did it. Like, let's just try it. I went to school in Orlando and just went to school to be a motorcycle mechanic and got certified in Suzuki and Yamaha, and just kind of overcame my fears of just, you know, what I went through with my accident and stuff like that. Just being a bicycle mechanic, dang, this is kind of the same thing of what I enjoy doing. Like, it's just not the motor now, I'm the motor.
Leo is my friend that helped me build the bike. Even though I was scared to ask for help, he was happy to help. Bicycles and life are difficult to build correctly the first time. There are so many moving parts that only work when they are put together perfectly. And then building an adaptive bike is even more challenging because there are no instructions for how it should be done. It requires a lot of trial and error and creative thinking to get an adaptive bike to work. I couldn't have done it alone.
I'm definitely most stubborn about asking for help because I don't want it. Probably because in the beginning, people didn't know how to help me. And I got a lot of positive reinforcement for helping myself. So I feel like when I ask for help, it means that I'm no longer independent. I'm now depending on somebody else to get somewhere. And again, cycling is changing my perspective a whole 180, that I can't do this alone. It's gonna take forever if I do it alone, and I just might not get there. So I'm asking for help. I definitely think that the other side of the coin of me being independent means that I lose some friendships and I lose relationships where it's dependent on being dependent, and it's a two-way road. It's a lot harder to disconnect from somebody than it is to connect with them. And I feel like now that I say it out loud, I realize that's totally an adopted thing. Like, we have to go through so much legal work to legally disconnect you from the people that made you. Maybe that's where my independence and that feeling comes from. I don't know. I can only say these things so confidently because now I know what it is to be comfortable with myself and to be comfortable in a relationship and to be comfortable with a group of friends and to be comfortable in a giant community, and it feels weird.
So now you've heard the bicycle teach me 5 lessons: balance, comfort, connection, asking for help, and personal growth. The latter, personal growth, is the most important to me because I realize that I can't grow and I won't grow if I don't want it. No matter what my parents, family, friends, coworkers, and mentors have said, I will only grow if I choose to.
All right, let's go, Josie.
Let's go. I've always been Josie alone, Josie out there, Josie doing things differently. But now with cycling, it's like, no, come with us, do the route that we're doing, come, like, get in our draft, let us help you, let us pull for you, let us break the way, because we know that you will make it further in life if we work together. Because when you do that consciously and actively, it seeps into your subconscious and you take that perspective with you in whatever else you do off the bike.
let's go, Josie. Why stop? Oh, it's that one right there. Awesome. So
Josie,
Gretchen,
I'm
I'm
gonna jump
gonna
in with a question here just because it
yeah.
connects to what you were just talking about at the end of the film. So now in your cycling, how many people are on your team? Like what does your support team look like right now?
It's huge. My support team is so big, and I'm so grateful for everyone that has helped me get to where I am and continues to help me to where I want to go. For example, Mike. Mike is in here. He is my contact at Hanger Prosthetics, who has helped me get a prosthetic. It was actually funny because while we were filming this, I was in contact with Mike, but nothing had been official about me getting a prosthetic yet. So I kind of wanted to have it in the film, but I feel like it gives a better picture of like who I was before the prosthetic as well. So there's Hanger Clinic, they're my prosthetic company. And then I got Fuji bikes and Shimano for the bike and the bike parts, which is also a funny story. So they were my first sponsors. And the way that happened is super unprecedented. So in 2019, before I was even thinking about prosthetics, I went to the Parapan American Games and I had this like nice Fuji race bike and it had Shimano Di2 on it, which is electric shifting instead of cable shifting. And our Team USA coach approached me and said, hey, would you like to be featured in a Shimano S-Tech video about how Di2 can help adaptive athletes? And I was like, of course I do. Like, that's what I'm here to do, is to help other athletes as well. So back in the States after the games, I'm getting my bike ready to go meet this guy. And no joke, I hear the free hub wheel just ride away. Yeah, so the bike was in my driveway, leaned up against my car, and my driveway is pretty long. It's like 20 feet, and it was definitely as pushed up to the house as possible. And I just went in to fill my water bottles because I was like, oh, should probably take some water. And instead of me sulking about it and endlessly looking around the streets of San Diego for this one bicycle, I decided to move on, to move forward. Mainly because that's kind of the type of person I am. I'm like, the past is the past, and this is totally because I'm adopted. I'm like, it is what it is. Let's just move on. So I started talking positively with the Shimano guy, and he was like, all right, we want to help you get a bike. And so he knew contacts at Fuji, and then all of a sudden, like, having my bicycle stolen, which is a thing everyone has had if you ride. Even if you don't ride a lot, like, odds are that you've had a bicycle stolen. So I took this very common, like, seemingly negative situation and I turned it into two, not one, but two sponsorships. And that's just like amazing to me, that not only can I make that happen with the right attitude, but the fact that Shimano and Fuji looked at me and they said, well, she doesn't have an athletic background, she's very new to the sport, and we don't really support any other paracyclists, but we're going to do it. We're going to give her the level of support as we would a professional world tour pro. And again, like, from that instance and every other sponsor that I've had since then, like, that's been the attitude that we've both brought to the table. And so I have my sponsors. I have Taylor, who was the blonde guy in the kitchen. So he really got me into cycling. And he's also a coach, which works out. Oh yeah, and we lived with two mechanics when I was trying to make this decision. So it was really, to me, I was like, well, I'm in the environment, I have the people, I have literally nothing else to lose. Like I am totally set up to make this work. And then ever since then, the cycling community has just been so supportive of everything that I do, whether it's racing or just riding for fun or putting on events. Like I did a premiere at a bike shop for Go Josie while Corona was going on and it was like outside. They have this like great parking space and we like got a projector and we like kept everyone socially distanced and it was amazing. We made it happen despite all these like seemingly negative rules and regulations. We still found a way to bring the community together. And because of the support that I have, like that gives me all the confidence moving forward to trials, to everything. Just like all these crazy dreams and ideas I have. That was a good question.
Well, that's fantastic. I love how the positivity connect, like how your positive approach has connected you to those sponsors. That's incredible. But I want to be sure that we have time for Q&A in a few minutes, but I also want to be sure that we can hear a little bit about your experience at the Paralympic trial. So I wonder if you could talk about just what that felt like to be racing in that environment.
Yeah. So the trials was unreal. Like it was put on so well, and we couldn't have gotten any better weather here in San Diego as we did in Minneapolis on the longest and hot, supposedly the hottest day of the year in the past. It turned out to be amazing. Like we had the road totally closed and to ourselves, and it was along a bike path. So the community in Minnesota for cycling is already huge, so that they could naturally engage in the trials as well, which was awesome. And it was also super fun because my family showed up to support me. And it wasn't just like, oh, my brother, my sister, and my mom came. It was like my brother, my sister, my mom, my sister-in-law, and a cousin. Like the whole family came just to support me. And I will let you know, none of them are into cycling outside the way I am. They know nothing about bicycling in general. So the opportunity to show them a part of my world and then also like kind of lead by example of like, oh, this is how I pick food. I go to the grocery store and I just go one of every color, either fruit or vegetable. And that's something that you have to experience to let it really sink into the mind. And I thought that it was like super awesome. Like my favorite part of the weekend was the last night where me and my 15-year-old cousin are supposed to be going to sleep, but we're laying in bed and we're just like chatting and we're just like talking about like, oh, like the timing of the food that I had and why I chose to have like all these dates in my pocket instead of like a gel. And he was laying there and he was like, well, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna go get on my bike and then I'm gonna train, and then maybe one year I'm going to the Olympics and you're going to the Paralympics and we can go together. And I was like, yes, we can, let's do it. And so that was really the best part for me, and I don't think anyone else there could say that. I saw other people with their parents as well. But for me to make an impact on my younger cousin like that was gold to me. Oh, and I got 12. So so I didn't make the team, but to me, like I still won. Like there's nothing more that I could have done for my cousin than to put myself in the best position to give myself the best chance. And it turns out that that was super impactful to him.
That's fantastic. And that was just last weekend, right?
Yeah. So I got back on Sunday. So haven't been home a week yet, or I guess a business week.
Great. Well, we're lucky that we could connect with you so close afterwards. So Josie, is there more you want to talk about right now, or do you want to bring it open to questions now?
Let's open it up to questions.
All right. So I was figuring since we're a small group, we can, obviously you can use the chat feature if you want to type your question in there, or you can use the raise the hand feature, or literally just raise your hand and to ask your question. So anyone want to get us started off? Rosalie, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, Josie, can you just tell us how old are you? And do you how long have you been sort of on your own?
So I'm 29, about to turn 30 actually on July 4th.
Wow.
And that's the second question is really tough because right now I don't feel like I'm on my own.
Good.
Yeah, which is amazing. But there have been years where I have tried to be on my own and I didn't get very far. Mostly right after college, I was like, all right, I'm ready for the world because I went to college and I tried to do things on my own, but it just never worked out as well as it is to involve everyone and to like have them help me and for me to help them in ways that I didn't even know were possible. So
well, it's clear that you are very, very much a people person, and that what makes you happy is working with other people and helping other people. And so that comes across definitely.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I feel like I don't usually see myself that way. So it like really helps hearing that from you to give myself a new perspective on me. So I like that. I like that version of me. Thanks.
Mike, we're going to go to Mike next with his question.
Hey, Josie, great job on the film and great job narrating it as well. In the film you described, when things didn't necessarily go your way, they always turned into opportunities. And hey, I know you were really hoping for a spot on the Paralympic team. And, so here is yet another opportunity, right?
Exactly.
So what is the encore for you here? What's next for you?
Oh, such a good question, Mike. So I'll kind of back up a little bit. There was a point when the games were on after they were being postponed, and I was starting to get anxious. I was like, okay, this is happening. It's a big race. Obviously, there's going to be big anxiety. So for me to get into the right mental state, I was like, what do I need to do? And in the race, the goal is to look past the finish line, right? You don't stop at the finish line, you run straight through or you bike straight through. So my mental mentality was to look past the Paralympics, not just the trials, but also the games. So I've created like a mini scenario where I go out and I start advocating for para mountain biking to become a Paralympic sport, because currently it's not. And to me, it's a double standard. And I understand in the past, let's say like the 60s, we didn't have the technology to get every type of person on a bicycle, but now we do. And so now we have the technology, we have the tools, we just have to put the right minds and the right people in a more inclusive perspective. So right now I am working on building a mountain bike, and not just any mountain bike. So this is also interesting. The day before we started filming Go Josie, my garage got broken into and they stole my mountain bike and like 3 other bikes. But the way I saw it, I was like, I wasn't upset because I had all of 2020 and that awesome road trip I took to like ride my mountain bike. To me, it would have been more upsetting if I didn't ride my mountain bike and then it got stolen. So, and like the more like wear and tear you put on a bike, the more often you have to like change the components and get new ones. So in my head, I was like, oh, you're just doing me a favor. So now I don't have to like do any maintenance on it. So now I'm going to upgrade because I'm always like trying to improve. And there is a limitation for my mountain bike. And it's also a limitation for not just mountain bikes, but like other bikes as well, which is small and extra small sizing is actually a medium shrunken down. And just because like manufacturing works more smoothly that way, rather than redesigning a small mountain bike to fit 2 bottle cages in the triangle, the industry just kind of like copies and pastes. So not having 2 water bottle cages is kind of limiting, not just for me, but for everyone who's smaller than 5'5", which happens to be mostly women of color and also kids. And so we're telling the women of color and kids, all these populations, that they can't ride longer, harder, faster because you just can't take as much water, which to me, like, that's not the message that we're trying to send. So for me, it sounds huge, but my next step is to kind of change the way that the industry promotes bicycles and manufactures them. Right now, we're in this like period where we can't get bikes. It's not like, oh, we don't have it in the store, we'll just order it and it'll come in a week. It's like, we don't have it and we can't get it. Just they don't exist, which is also kind of perfect for what I'm trying to do, because if I can help amplify the importance of a custom mountain bike for not just for adaptive athletes, but for everyone. Like sometimes you have a person who's 5'5" and their friend is also 5'5", but the first friend is like more torso and the second friend is more legs. So do you think that the same bike is going to ride exactly the same for both? They're not. So it's like these little things that I want to start incorporating into the industry and the way that manufacturing works. So now that my sponsors have given me like what they have given me already, now I feel like this is how I can give back to them and say, you can create a better industry. And then also it opens up the door to a bigger audience and a wider audience. And then now everybody wants like a custom bike instead of like a stock bike. And they just don't want the one custom bike. They want the road bike, the gravel bike, the mountain bike, the track bike, the cyclocross bike. Like we can just go back through and just create a better industry too, which I think would be setting such a huge example for all sports as well. Start at the hardest sport and then show everyone, all right, we can do it with the hardest sport there, then we can do it with every other sport. Good question. Thanks, Mike.
So we're going to be looking for your name with all the adaptive mountain biking. That's exciting. Sharon, it looked like you had a question too.
I did have a question. It was the same one Mike had, but to follow up a little bit on that, Josie, do you see yourself competing in the Paralympic Games in the future, or is advocacy going to be your mantra from now on?
I'll do, why not both, you know? Like why does it have to be one or the other? I think I can definitely push both. I feel like riding my mountain bike, which is much heavier than a road bike, really gives me the strength and the power and the mental capacity to know that I can push harder than I have been on the road bike. So I think to me, the more I ride my mountain bike and the further away we are from the next games, which is right now, then the better chance I have at the games. Because then once I get on a road bike, which is lighter and faster, oh yeah, and also there aren't like a bunch of like rocks and like mountains I have to come over, then it would just be easier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think your aunt is reminding you that she was there at the trials too in the chat.
Yes. I thought I said my aunt, but I guess I did it because I know she would have known. I'm sorry, Eldy.
There's a couple questions from one of our athletes who I was talking to earlier this week, and he is a runner, so he's really focused on his shoes. So he wanted to ask, what type of shoes do you wear when you're running, and also what type of, or not when you're riding, and what type of socks do you wear?
Good question. So my shoes are special. They have clips, and I can just grab a pair to demonstrate. So I'm clipped into the bike, so then I can not just push on the pedals, but also pull up. And then also I'm a little bit more stable, so I know that my foot won't slip out. So these are Shimano shoes. They have a whole bunch of different levels of shoes. This is like my training shoe, so not the highest quality, but not like the cheapest either. So somewhere in the middle, a balance, you could say. And then the socks I wear, they are Swiftwicks, and they actually promote wicking away sweat and at the same time compressing the foot for better blood flow as well. So, and they're also like great because I walk around outside in my socks, and so typically like a cheap pair of socks I'll just like burn holes through really quick. These are impossible to burn a hole through unless you're literally using fire. Like they'll wear out, but there's still another layer of fabric underneath. They use like this crisscross method, and it just makes sense. And they're also very sustainable as well. So that's important to me when I like pick sponsors and who I want to promote, is like not just like, oh, well, give me free things. It's like, what kind of company are you? Are you one that's trying to like reduce your carbon footprint and to reduce plastics as well, which means creating products that will last a lifetime rather than a month, so then people just buy them again. So to me, like Swiftwick and Pearl Izumi, which is my clothing company, they've been like so good about being sustainable and like minimizing their carbon footprint, which is amazing to me and super important for everyone.
Great. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, every time I get on these types of calls with athletes at the highest level, I always ask a similar question. And that question is, you know, what do you do to avoid burnout? And, you know, how do you address that when you feel yourself like, you know what, I think I'm maxed out right now. What's the next step to avoid burnout?
That's a really good question, Mike. And I'm glad that you asked not just me, but everyone that you meet, because I'm realizing transitioning from like a normal person or a 9-to-5er into elite athlete, that there is an over glorification for people to burn out, which creates burnout. And it's to push and push and push until your legs fall off, metaphorically. And, or maybe some lower amputees, they actually fall off. And for me, like, it's not about being disconnected with how my body feels and what I'm telling it. It's being more connected. So that's not, my method is never to like overdo it, which is great. But so when that does happen, I take a rest day. Like if I find myself in the middle of a workout and I feel that way, then I'll shut it down metaphorically and I'll just like easy ride home, and then talk to Taylor, my coach, and be like, all right, how can we adjust now 1 week instead of shuffling the whole season if I were to push and then worst case scenario get injured. And it's also super interesting too, because I noticed as a woman who's trying to be at her top level, I realized I have to pay attention to things I've been ignoring, like my menstrual cycle. And the best way to work with my cycle for my training is to just incorporate more rest. And so then it's like I'm training smarter, not harder. And so essentially, for every 3 weeks of training, I'll take 1 week off, and then I'll synchronize it so that week off is also my like PMS phase or the high hormone phase. And then everything is happy, like not just me and my body, but the people around me are happy. And like my partner's happy, my roommates are happy. It's just like, it's, I think, I think also with coronavirus, what we learned as a whole in the world is that we have been going and pushing for a really long time. And we needed that rest, because that will happen with athletes no matter what level you are. So I'll rephrase that. That's what happens with humans, no matter who you are or what kind of goals you have. If you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, eventually you'll get injured or sick, because your body doesn't have the energy to repair itself or to fight for itself against an infection. That's a good question. I feel like that's so important.
That's
Josie.
another part of that balance business that you talk about.
Yeah.
All part of that balance. Good
Right?
for you.
Yeah.
And Josie, Lynn is asking about what you eat on a typical day. Did you tell us yet what you eat on a typical day?
Ooh, I've not. So in the mornings, if it's not a rest day, if it's on the bike day, I'll eat oatmeal. And then if it's like a long endurance day, I'll add eggs. But then if it's like a short high intensity day, I'll go protein shake instead of eggs. So then I can stay more into the carb burning, I guess, mentality. And then after that, within 30 minutes of getting off the bike, I'll have another protein shake, no matter what kind of day it was. And then if I want to have a quote unquote cheat meal or a treat like ice cream, I'll go get that immediately right after the bike, right after I'm on the bike. Because there's this window where your body is still catching up with what your brain knows is going to happen. So after you exercise, all the blood is going to your muscles. And then if you can get like your sugary soda for the day in, or like I love gelato with the cone. So I'll like stop my rides at the gelato store and then get that sugar to be shuttled to my muscles. And then it tops off my energy levels for the next workout rather than going to my liver for disease. So that will be my meal off or after the bike. And then the multiple dinners after that are full of just complex carbohydrates, good sources of protein, and a lot of vegetables. I love micronutrients because I feel like nobody really talks about them unless it's like singling them out. But I, like everything else, like vitamin E only works good if it's in conjunction with everything else. Then taking too much of it actually promotes disease rather than health. So I focus on just getting one of every color of fruit or vegetable in a day.
I
And
love that
that's,
rule. It's
yeah.
so simple.
Right. Yeah. And then it's like a positive thing to focus on instead of being like, you can't have this list of foods, but you're listing out these foods. So that's all you can think about. It's like, okay, well, what can I have? And it's very open. And it also, like, to me, creates this mindset where it's like, okay, so if I want all the colors of food, I also want all the colors of friends. You know? And it's like, you don't know why, but like, having that crossover or having this food advice like set you up for this type of mindset is going to be beneficial in the long run rather than excluding things and being like, no, you can't eat this, and then it's like, no, I can't be your friend because of A, B, or C. But sorry, I digressed.
Right on, right on. We got another question from Rebecca. She's saying she's 5'3", and so she's excited that you're working with manufacturers on bike sizes, but she wants to know what your favorite race distance is.
Ooh, the longer the better. Just because I feel like it's more of a mental game at the end of the race rather than like a physical power kind of game. So this is interesting. I signed up for a 150-kilometer mountain bike race in Costa Rica, and I think this is going to be my race where I do really well. Well, first I got to like build that mountain bike and everything, but I'm making a plan for me to use it and to also like kind of give myself an excuse to go to Costa Rica because I've never been there. And then if I don't finish the bike race, then I'm still in Costa Rica, you know? There's no losing for me either way. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I wanted to check in because we're right at the end of our hour, but we did have our guessing game. If anyone wants to try answering one of those questions before we finish up for the night. Anyone want to guess how many bikes Josie has currently? I'm seeing a 2.
I'll give you a hint. It's more than the 3 in the background. So it's more than 3.
7.
Ooh, that was it. That was good. That was it. It's 7. Nice.
I just figured because you're into good energy and 7's like a lucky number, that would be something you would do.
Oh, I like the way you think. I didn't think about it that way. That's makes sense to me.
All right, we'll go through a couple more. How long was Josie's last ride?
Oh, that's really close. I
Yep.
think it was 43, right?
Yep, 43 miles.
Yeah. Wow.
Hours.
I've never been so predictable in my life. This is awesome.
How often does Josie train? How many days per week?
6.
Ooh, that's a good guess. Wait, do we count rest days?
I don't know.
That's a good question. Well, okay, if we're counting rest days, then it's 7, but not including rest days, it's between 3 and 5, depending on the intensity. So if it's low intensity, I'll go more days, but if it's high intensity, I'll take less days. For balance.
All right, and we've got one last question. I'm going to skip over race day food because we talked about that already. But what do you think is her favorite post-ride snack?
Gelato.
Besides gelato.
Yeah. I'm going to change my original answer to gelato because it's true.
Yeah, we're definitely getting a lot of votes for gelato on here. All right, so it's gelato and
smoothies, avocado toast, honestly, everything in my fridge, whatever's in my fridge.
I can relate to that.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Well, your mom says she eats a lot.
It's true.
So I want to thank everyone again for being here. We could probably take one last question if there's any more burning questions. But this has been so great, Josie, to get to know you a little more, to hear about your goals for where you're headed next. And it's really exciting to think about that adaptive, the para mountain biking and the impact that you're going to have both, as a racer and as an advocate. So thanks again for spending some time with us and connecting with EDD Adaptive Sports. We'll definitely be following you on your journey, and I'm sure we'll invite you back to something in the near future.
Awesome. Thanks, Gretchen. Yeah, hopefully we get to meet in person.
I would love that. That'd be great. And share a meal.
I agree.
All
And
right. well,
gelato.
Josie's racing later tonight and later this weekend too. So good luck with your races. Have fun, and we'll look forward to hearing about where you go next.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Josie.
you. Thank you.
Thanks, Josie.
You're welcome.